3 days, 3 nights they had fasted. Mordecai and all the Jews in the city of Susa, they were praying, they were believing that Esther would find favor. She would boldly come before the king. It was a move that could cost her her life, but she knew that she had to do it. She'd been placed in position for such a time as this. It says at the end of 3 days, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace in front of the king's hall. This is chapter 5, verse 1. The king was sitting on his royal throne in the hall facing the entrance. When he saw Queen Esther standing in the court, he was pleased with her, and he held out to her the gold scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. Then the king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom it will be given to you." "If it pleases the king," replied Esther, "let the king together come with Haman and come to a banquet that I have prepared for him." I love this about Esther. She's such a woman of wisdom. Not only does she have the faith and the boldness to come before the king, but she does it with such great honor and humility. If you remember in chapter 1, the queen was frustrated that Vashti wouldn't come before him. I'm sure it made him proud and feel honored that Esther did come to seek him out. And when she came before him, he offered to give her something, but she didn't ask for something. She offered to give him something. She said, "Let me honor you. Let me have a banquet for you. Let me celebrate you and the one who is closest to you in Haman." The king says, "Get Haman. We're going to Esther's party. Let's go right now." He tells his attendants, "Go get Haman." And it says, as they were drinking wine, the king asked Esther, "Now, what is your petition? I kind of find it comical because, as we've talked about earlier in these videos, the king was often referred to as quite the drinker and quite the liberal man, and it would often get him into trouble. But it looks like at this point in time, he's drinking and he's being married and he's about to give Esther whatever she asked for. So really, Esther's in some ways using what she knows about him to her advantage. And he says, "What is your petition? It will be given to you. And what is your request? Even up to half the kingdom." Esther replied, "My petition and my request is this. If the king regard me with favor, and if it pleases the king to grant my request, let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for them. Then I'll answer the king's question." Verse 9. Haman went out that day happy and in high spirits. He was excited. It wasn't just the king and the queen at Esther's banquet. It was the king and the queen and him. In his mind, he thought he was winning. In many ways, it reminds me of a picture of the cross. The devil was probably so excited, so overjoyed when Christ went to the cross and Christ was being crucified. He probably thought he had won, but what he didn't realize was he was making the dumbest mistake he had ever made. The Bible tells us that if Satan had knew what would have taken place at the cross, he would have never had the King of Glory crucified. He would have fought tooth and nail to keep Jesus from being crucified. The devil thought he was winning, but he was really orchestrating his own demise. The same thing is taking place here with Haman. But when he saw Mordecai at the king's gate and observed that he neither rose nor showed fear in his presence, he was filled with rage against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home. Calling together his friends and Zeresh, his wife, Haman boasted them about his vast wealth, his many sons, and all the way the king had honored him, and how he had elevated him above all the other nobles and officials. "And that's not all," Haman added. "I'm the only person Queen Esther invited to accompany the king to the banquet she's giving, and she's invited me along with the king tomorrow. But all this gives me no satisfaction as long as I see that Jew Mordecai sitting at the king's gate." Interesting. All the honor that he was receiving, all the benefits that he was receiving, and yet hate was keeping him from having any joy in his life. What a principle and what a lesson that we can take and learn and apply to our own life of how hate can blind us, but love will free us. His wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, "Have a pole set up reaching to a height of 50 cubits and ask the king in the morning to have Mordecai impaled on it. Then go with the king to the banquet and enjoy yourself." This suggestion delighted Haman, and he had the pole set up. His wife tells him, "Go ask the king to just have this man executed, have this man killed." It's crazy how far hate and unresolved, unaddressed anger can take us in our mind. I mean, how sad is it that the only way that someone can find peace is if the person that frustrates them is dead or is gone? Haman has allowed a root of bitterness to grow up in his life, and Haman has allowed evil thoughts to take control of his life, and he's going down a path of wickedness where there's no return. And Haman is blinded by his money, his wealth, his success, the honor that the king gives to him, and he's not aware of the wickedness that's going on inside of him. I'm going to stop with chapter 5 and jump into chapter 6 in our next video, but I want to share this with you. It's something that's important for me to share with you today. Don't allow a root of bitterness, the book of Hebrews talks about this, to spring up inside of you. And what the book of Hebrews tells us is that when it does spring up inside of us, it will cause trouble and it will defile many. You say, what does that mean? It's not just me that will be affected by my bitterness. It's everyone around him. Haman was defiling himself. He was defiling his family. He was defiling the king. He was trying to harm all of the Jews because of his frustration with one Jew, Mordecai. He had allowed his frustration with one man to lead him to hate and to want to destroy an entire ethnicity. He was beyond too far gone. And soon we will learn how not only will Esther plead with the king to save the Jewish people, but the king's eyes will become opened to the man that Haman really is, and the pole and the method of execution that Haman set up for Mordecai would soon fall on him, and he himself would die. I share this with you. I kind of jump ahead in the story to share this with you. Bitterness leads to death, not just in the lives of those around us, but it also kills things inside of us. Many marriages have I seen die because of bitterness. Don't allow a root of bitterness to rise up in your life. If you feel like you struggle with bitterness, take it to the Lord. Take it to spiritual mentors in your life. Take it to your small group that you're a part of. Get counsel, get accountability, get free. Walk in freedom every day. Be blessed.